Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at this Your Overseas Home webinar. My name is Christopher Nye, and I'm Senior Editor at Your Overseas Home and also France Property Guides. It's great to have you all with us, whether you're with us live or you're catching up on demand. Today, we are joined by Severine Jaulent from Beaux Villages Immobilier. Sev is a French jurist. She brings a wealth of legal knowledge and expertise to Beaux Villages and is the perfect guest speaker for anyone to hear all about the off-plan property, how to do it, why to do it, the legal protections, and to pose your own questions. We've got 30 minutes, so if you do have a question, please type it into the tab on the right-hand side, and we'll get to it following the presentation. Now, if you need a reminder of anything that's discussed today, or you want to share this with friends, a replay will be available in a few days on the Your Overseas Home website. I think you'll probably get it tomorrow, actually, so it will be available from tomorrow morning. Severine, I'm going to pass over to you, and you've got a really great presentation. I've already seen it, so we look forward to hearing it, and do put in your questions on the right-hand side as we go along. Thank you. Over to you, Severine.
Hi, Christopher. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and hi, everyone. We're going to run an explanation of what off-plan is like over in France, and hopefully it's quite thorough. It's about giving you a lot of information, but if you do need personal advice, please contact us and we'll help and advise you individually, because there is a lot to it. Buying off-plan in France is made quite secure, both by the legality surrounding this type of build, but also the conveyancing schedule and possible tax advantages that optimize return on investment. The other advantage is it is also less strenuous in terms of cash flow, as payments are scheduled by law according to the building stages all the way to completion, while a customer can purchase a property in 2 to 4 months after having reserved it while works are ongoing. With French law being so protective of customers, the French process is probably the most secure in Europe and maybe in the world. The art of successful off-plan purchase is choosing the right property for the customer's project, and in this, a local expert is always key. So first, the technical process. The technical process, I'll summarize it by the guarantees of a new build in France. And it's a very admin slide, a very admin recap. So I'll apologize in advance for how boring this is going to be. But basically, the first guarantee that you get is given town planning rules. It is quite thorough over here, as France, again, is extremely protective of the customer. The planning process runs in 4 different planning stages, and the whole of it, including the appeal deadline, run for about a year from the moment one applies for planning to the moment planning cannot be opposed anymore, and it is valid and ready to go ahead. So this is as thorough as it gets, and when an off-plan property is put on the market, all of this has been cleared ahead of times. You also get other guarantees with a new build, which are summarized in that particular slide. First of all, the Garantie Financière d'Achèvement, called GFA. This is a guarantee that the developer must subscribe to. It is like a financial insurance. It happens prior to offering any lots for sale. So basically, no property can go on sale without this guarantee being subscribed to and accepted. This allows for all off-plan properties in France to be sold prior to completion of the works, and it runs for up to 1 year after the works have been delivered. Then you get another guarantee, which is the GPA, Garantie de Parfait Achèvement. It's a fault-free completion guarantee. The promoter must list all potential issues if they encountered any issues during the build, and it runs from 1 year after the delivery of the works. You have also the GBF, Guarantee of Bon Fonctionnement, which is operational guarantee. It covers all equipments that can be removed from the building, such as window, doors, heating system, and that lasts for 2 years after the property is delivered. Then you have the 10-year guarantee, the décennal, which covers specific works on structural elements and is safety focused. A tradesman must qualify to be entitled to subscribe to this guarantee. Last but not least, the assurance dommage ouvrage is yet the latest guarantee, is damage to works insurance. which covers, as it says on the name, covers damages that are caused by work subject to decennial insurance. So all these guarantees are insurances that are benefiting the buyer and that are basically covering all stages of the work, from the moment the work haven't even started, the very beginning of the process, to the very end. Last but not least, the Carnet d'information du logement is a new law that started in France this year, and it centralizes all the information about the build. It's about energy efficiency, type of materials, and so on. It is mandatory, so it's yet another piece of information that is mandatory by law, which one does get when they apply for a new build and they want to secure their purchase. So that's the first part of the process, the technicalities, from the moment, and as it says on the slide, to design and works and the delivery. You have about 10 years of protection altogether. Now, moving on to the legal process. The legal process is quite specific to off-plan. It is a thorough process that's specific to France, and it starts with a reservation contract. So at the very beginning of the purchase, the developer and the buyer, through the agent in charge of the sale, will be introduced to a reservation contract. It is a private agreement between parties. In most cases, it's drafted by the notary in charge of the project, which is the notary of the vendor, the notary being a solicitor in France in charge of conveyancing. This allows the developer to have some visibility on the commercial aspect of the project before starting works and furthering the investment. Meanwhile, the buyer has pre-booked the property in their name, and if early in the process, can also be offered a choice of material. So the buyer gets involved in the beginning of the project and sometimes has a choice of material, tiling, styles for interior decoration. The amount to be paid at the time of the reservation contract is whether 5% of the full purchase price. We will come back on the financials in the further slide, but basically to give you a bit of an idea, 5% of the full purchase price if the purchase deed is signed within a year after the reservation contract was signed, and it falls down to 2% if the purchase deed is signed between 1 or 2 years after this reservation contract was signed. So anytime there is an unplanned delay in the process, the financial are in favor of the buyer. Once this reservation contract is signed, the whole dossier goes to a notary, so a solicitor, for a preliminary deed and a final sales deed. The whole process takes about 3 months or 4 months, 3 months being the earliest. It depends also on the financing and the special request of the buyer. To protect the customer, there are also quite a few withdrawal options through this process. The buyer gets a 10 days withdrawal option after the reservation contract is signed, and then another one after the preliminary deed of sale is signed at the solicitor, so 2 times 10 days. These 10 days can be extended to 14 business days if a reservation contract has been signed, with someone coming to the client's house and getting them to sign the reservation contract there and then. So again, customer protection is key in this. The legal process is very much in favor of the buyer. This slide goes over the same thing between finance application, loan offer, legal process, and work supervision. It gives you a bit of an idea of the timings and also what is needed through this process. Between the finance application and the reservation contract signature and the delivery of the property, it is usually an average of 24 months. So now the financials. In the protection of the customer, sorry, I'm going to go back on the previous slide for a minute. I went a little bit too fast. There are also, to protect the customer, there's also some suspensive conditions in the deed that the notary is going to draft. Suspensive conditions are conditions where the buyer, the customer, can opt out without incurring any charges or any financial issues whatsoever. So first is financing. If the application to their mortgage, if they need a mortgage, is unsuccessful and it stays within the frame that was defined by the solicitor, the buyer can opt out freely. On the final price of the property, well, for off-plan, it is quite specific. The price of the contract can only increase due to exceptional and unforeseen circumstances, but this increases if this increase is greater than 5% of the agreed price on the booking contract, then the buyer can opt out. So if the developer runs into trouble, needs extra funds, then there's a limit to that as well. Other suspensive conditions are of common law. The property must be sold free of external rights, so mortgages, earlier mortgages and easements and so on and so forth. The buyer gets informed of all of that. So any type of rights on the property, they will be clear about this. The specification sheet is basically a technical sheet that is given to the buyer at the time of the reservation contract. This sheet lists all the equipment and material chosen by the buyer, as well as the construction techniques used. During the building stages, if any works differ from this sheet, the client may withdraw from the purchase. So that is it's as binding as it gets, and it happens early on in the very early stages of the reservation contract. Now back to the solicitors in charge of conveyancing in France, the notaries. Notaries are ministry officers, and their work is binding. Their advice are sole and impartial, and they cannot divert from the law. So they are your trusted advisor during the process as well. They are the ones who are going to make it secure, and they have this obligation of advice to their clients. So any questions can be asked directly to them if you need another opinion, that whatever the promoter, the developer, and your agents who is in charge of making this process run smoothly have given you, deemed not enough, you've got that as well to help. Then the last guarantee you're given also is the vice caché protection. Now, this one is quite a specific one. A hidden vice, which translates in French as a vice caché, is a default that affects the property in such a way that it cannot be used as planned. The vice caché guarantee starts when the purchase completion deed is signed. So the notaire very much initiates that on completion deed, and it runs for up to 20 years after the purchase. It seems a lot, and it gives you this extra layer comfort and protection, but it is important. If any issues would arise, any issues of importance, that would be deemed a vice caché, to raise these issues within 2 years of their discovery. So all that is the legal process and the level of security which is specific to France, and makes this off-plan purchase a lot more secure than maybe any other type of purchase, really, when you look into it. Now, the financials. So off-plan financials are scheduled, and I'll share this little image early because it summarizes everything, really. Financials are itemized according to law, not usually in a minimum of 4 stages, but the stages are here itemized in more stages than what you could find, and generally this is what you're getting. So on booking, you're paying 5% at the reservation contract, and then everything else is itemized as the build goes. If the works don't start, then the rest of the payment doesn't start as well. The call for capitals are scheduled, so like I said, by a minimum of 4 mandatory stages. Foundation stage, then the building gets watertight, then completion of the building, and the final installments happen at delivery with intermediate stages. As we said before, it can take about 24 months to complete a building, and which allows a lot of flexibility for the buyer as far as their equity planning and release, and the way they're going to wrap up the financials of their purchase. Then stamp duty and notary fees that are specific to that type of purchase through off-plan. As far as VEFA is concerned, and we will come back in a minute on the definition between VEFA and VAR. VEFA is an off-plan that comes off the ground. So basically, if you visit the site, you'd only see a field. That's one type of off-plan in France. VAR is an old listed building, for example, or a character building that gets renovated. So whatever it is inside is new, and the outside remains, having the character that would attract someone to that type of building. Those two can consider being off-plan purchases, but they have different types of stamp duty. When it's a VEFA, so a field, looking at a field, and it will be a full completion, a full build from the ground, the stamp duty is from 2 to 3% of the purchase price. When it's a VAR, it's 7 to 8%, which makes it a bit similar to a regular purchase. That's the regular average of stamp duty purchases in France. We'll come back to the difference between VAR and VEFA in a minute. So when we say stamp duty or notaire fee, it is all bundled into one. When these 7 to 8% or 2 to 3% contain mostly stamp duty and taxes, and the notaire fee are about 1 or 2% of that. It fluctuates. So now the specifics of the off-plan offer in France. The definition we just did of VEFA and VAR, the VEFA being the classical off-plan sale, which implies a development that starts from the foundation up, and the VAR, the off-plan sale in an existing character or listed building. But there are also some other types of offer in France for VEFA. For example, you can find themed residence. So it is the theme being usually a sport like golfing, for example, and a full off-plan is built around a golf course. So that will attract a certain clientele and certain specific services will be provided. And then the other offer is the branded residence. The branded residence is a big thing in off-plan at the moment because it is especially attracted to investors. You have a lot more return on your investment because it usually pairs with a rental scheme and other tax advantages, which I will try to explain in a minute. The brand can be something else than a hotel, but when it is a hotel, there are some advantages that are directly affecting the buyer, and that could be very appealing to foreign buyers as well. When we go back to the tax advantages, what they try to bring is the possibility of high yields, easy management, and also to lower the taxable income. There's three possibilities in France because at the moment, renting a furnished property in France is a bit of a tax niche. So when someone buys a property as an investment, especially in a branded residence, and they decide that they're only going to use it as a secondary residence, it's going to be empty, what am I to do with it? There are some tax advantages of renting out furnished property. They can pay off their investment through their accounts over 25 years. This is offsetting the aging of the property. There is a formula for that. This is something specific that relates to the price of the property, so that would need a further and more specific consultation. I'm only trying to make it short here. This is very interesting because that gets offset against the yearly income that one makes by renting their property. And sometimes the yearly tax declaration that would be mandatory in France as you are making money on French territory will be below zero just because of that advantage. There's some other advantages to this. If you subscribe or a buyer subscribes to any of these schemes prior, if they have, for example, a hosting company in a regular VEFA or a branded residence, and so there is a hotel on the residence that will offer the services for you. If you subscribe to any of these schemes prior to the purchase, you will get your VAT back, which is something. So on the purchase, that can amount to a minimum of 5.5% to 20% of the price, of the full price of the purchase. And it is quite interesting for a buyer as well. If the notaire in charge of this, the purchase and the completion of your purchase is informed of this, you might not even have to pay the VAT at all because they can decide to do this offsetting for you. So instead of having to pay it at completion, they will waive it there and then. As well as with any other type of rental, expenses that are incurring during the purchase of the properties can be deductible in full from a year's result. So another way to lower your taxable income. So when we sometimes hear, oh my God, I'm going to make money out of my rental in France, that's going to be tax related, it's going to be high tax, my God, what am I going to do? Not with that. This is a very, very good scheme. And we always advise our client, but we also try to put them together with experts who can help and support their endeavors so that it's completely secure, because it is quite an interesting way to invest their money. And it's highly popular in France when you pick the right property and the right location. Lastly, as far as the VEFA, so the classical off-plan sale is concerned, you will not pay a property tax for 2 years after your purchase, which is also quite interesting. So if you have that's a broad range of advantages, but there could be some other schemes as well, which are a lot more specific and related to the works that are being carried on the property. That concerns VAR, which is seen as a renovation, and that in France is paired with other schemes that can, again, give you quite a bit of tax deduction And that could be interesting, even more interesting when people then at some point become French residents. So that is a bit of a one-to-one calculation that gets estimated depending on specifics. The price of potential works and furniture is also deductible, last but not least, out of this tax scheme. So that's quite interesting. If you're going to furnish the property and then rent it, you can offset your furniture price. So that's quite good, because that can amount to quite a bit of money. Some of the branded residences are sold furnished, and when you get the reservation contract and you get your prices, all of this is itemized. This is the reason why sometimes people don't understand right away why everything is itemized like this, but basically it is because many people regard this as an investment as well as the possibility to live in a lovely place and benefit from a new build with all its guarantees. So that brings a lot of positives. So this summarizes the off-plan offer in France. It has reduced notaire fees from rates from 2.5 to 3% for VEFA, customization and choice of finish is a big thing also, because you get involved in the process. It is guaranteed by various types of insurance, and these insurances, to be granted these insurances, your developer, your builder will have to qualify for them. So it's not like anyone can just pay and have them. The partial property exemption for 2 years is important, but it's also a sustainable way to purchase a property, because energy saving and compliance are the heart of the French politics at the moment, and especially regarding building and plan. So there isn't simply no option to do any other type of build than something that is sustainable and with high energy rating. So that's the advantages altogether. Now we've selected a few properties that might be of interest, and as an example, and to show you.
Let's just have a couple of questions before we go on to the properties. Otherwise, there'll be too much for us to think about. Okay, we've had a question from Yana. Are mortgages easier to get for off-plan property than for a resale property?
I don't think it makes much of a difference, but what's always pleasing to a bank is the way the guarantees are linked to the purchase of the property. For example, in France, you don't have to have a mortgage to buy a property. It can be a loan. So your property is not always a guarantee, but the value of property is always taken into account. So when you tie this with an investment scheme, when you're going to rent the property, when you go for this advice, then it's very pleasing to the bank, because an income is to be made, and that secures your mortgage. So that's the type of guarantee that the bank is going to look into. And to them, it's not rocket science. Nice location, good quality good quality of the build. So it's a no-brainer.
Okay. Gillian has asked, to clarify, under a VEFA, no property tax is paid for the first 2 years after delivery of the property.
That's okay. It. So right. You have property tax is due at the end of the year. When someone has been on the premises on the 1st of January, property tax is issued in September, October of that going year. So what happens with VEFA is that for the first 2 years after the delivery of the property, you're not paying that at all.
Okay. Manuela has asked, when are the notaire fees payable?
Payable on completion day, always. The notaire finish their work as such when the completion deed is signed. So this is when they're payable, but everything else is itemized as per the slide that we showed earlier. So the payments basically are ongoing. The guarantee we spoke about at the very beginning of the presentation, that protects the customer as far as the future payments, because in fact you're going to have ongoing payment on a property that you're not already in, is that's covered by that guarantee. But the notaire is always the guardian of the program that they are representing. So if there's any issue, even way after the completion has been made, this is the person to go back to in first instance.
Okay, just one more, and then we go back to the properties. On the financials, the stage payments, the 5% here, the 5% there.
Sure.
Who's telling me that it's now watertight or the concrete's done?
So because they are official stages, you will get all proofs from the builder and the developer that it has including guarantees. So that will be in writing. Obviously, you get to visit the property on demand, so you can go and see it by yourself. That is not a problem at all. If you're far away, your agent will do that for you on request, and so someone will be there to see. But also, as the bill goes, this carnet d'information logement has to log this in. So the builder has, by law, to register the date of completion of these stages. So once it's completed, they can't say, well, it really isn't. So you really have that level of clarity and guarantee, and they know how. They basically, in France, there is no room to play with this.
Okay, great. So the message I'm getting, because I know there's a lot of information, but the overall message I'm getting is that it seems incredibly safe, and there's tax advantages.
Absolutely. And this is why it's such an interesting offer at the moment, because all of this in the current circumstances where people always worry about coming to another country, not knowing the legalities, oh my God, taxes and all this scaremongering that we read everywhere. Actually, there is no point of that over here. It is one of the most secure ways to purchase a property.
Okay, well, let's look at some properties now. If we need to go over beyond 5 o'clock, we'll do that. That's no problem. So take us through a few examples.
Well, we've chosen 2 examples.
Keep asking your questions. Keep on throwing them in, and we'll perhaps have time.
Okay, no problem. Tell me if you need to jump in. We've chosen 2 different types of property to illustrate the VEFA and VAR. So the first property that we are going to show you is what is called a VAR. This is a listed building, which is at the heart of a listed area of Carcassonne. It's a medieval town. It has one of the most famous buildings in the world, which is listed at UNESCO in the middle of the city, basically. So it's very protected. You just can't build anything that doesn't fit town planning, and it's quite a tight town planning. So this building that you see on the left side of the pictures is a listed building that is going to be redone from the inside, but that will remain. All the character inside the building will remain. There are staircases in there. There are some stained glass all over the building, in the staircases, in some of the individual spaces that are going to be apartments. So it's absolutely charming. And even the garden that you see at the front of the picture which is an enclosed garden that is private to that property, is listed, and some of the trees in that garden are listed. So it's quite a special place. You get a huge private space, but inside that building, you will have the highest level of energy efficiency, and as far as the building is concerned, and quite a lot of nice living space with high ceilings, lovely high windows. It's a good offer, but it's quite a different offer. People don't always think about things like that as off plan, but in France, this is also off plan and considered as such. So you get to live in a listed building with the highest level of guarantee and quality for your apartment. So prices range from 187,000 to over $1 million for a very, very nice apartment, which is a penthouse apartment over 2 levels. It's quite special to see. I've seen the building myself, and I have to say that there's a lot to say for it. This is obviously available to all eligible for the tax schemes we were talking about earlier. It's always, when one looks at these tax schemes, it's always interesting to do it in a touristic town, and this is what this is about as well. You have about 5 to 6 million visitors to Carcassonne on a yearly basis. So if you want to go for the rental scheme, it's a good bet. This shows you the layout of the apartment and the city, which is your view basically for some of it. Now, this is the second offer, which is a VEFA. So this is completely off the ground. This, as of today, is being built. So built from the foundation up. This is a very touristic town on the Med. And this particular development has 2 very special things about it. First of all, in France, there's so many laws that prevent you from building anything on the shores that this type of building simply cannot happen anymore. So it's just an extremely lucky thing to be able to have this on the water in a very touristic area, which is on the Mediterranean coast, and attracts a lot of tourists. It's quite nice. There's a very cute port walking distance from it. It's absolutely lovely. So that's for the location. That's for the quality of life also, because you get high life quality in that particular area. And at the same time, this is part of a branded residence. So on this development, there is to be a 5-star hotel, and we just had confirmation that an agreement was signed, and that it is Marriott who is going to run the hotel. And that makes it very interesting, because the return on investment when you have a brand like that is just magnified. They run the rental schemes when an owner wants a buyer wants to go for the rental scheme. Obviously, it's not an obligation. This is not a timeshare. This is something that you own as a property, and you decide to make it available or not. But when you do make it available, Marriott runs it for you and offers it to their platinum customers. So there is nothing to do other than just give them the key, and they do everything. And return on investment for properties like that are quite high, and the yields are quite high. The price ranges from 420,000 to 5 million, depending on the type. There's some very exclusive villas in the front. There's some what we call patio villas. That's an average of the price, which have a private swimming pool. You can see in the middle picture of this slide what this is going to what this is, what the location looks like, sorry. And on the top left of the shore, you might see a little red line. It's quite small, but you might see it. This is exactly where the development is going to be. So that you could not be closer to the water. This is a laguna as well, as one of the cleanest in Europe. So sustainability is a big part of it. It's very eco-friendly. And we know, because we've been at the heart of the project for a while already, that Marriott was looking for another location on the Med, and they simply couldn't find anything at all. So they've been looking at having a branded residence on the Med for a while, and that was basically their only opportunity. And I think this is it. We've reached the end of the presentation of these two different types of properties.
You have. You reached the end. Okay. Well, look, we've run over time, and but let me just check through. Does Beaux Villages itself offer any management services?
We don't offer it, but we connect you with people who do. This is part of our offer. We're very, very high on services, whether it is from us directly or from our partners, who are always trusted partners. So we facilitate that if needs be, by all means.
Okay, and if we're not looking at the Mediterranean coast or in the Carcassonne region, can we expect more to come online, for example, in Nouvelle-Aquitaine? Is this something you're actively looking for?
Absolutely. Well, I can't tell you all about it yet, but there are definitely some things in Sidelands that are going to come out sometime soon, all the way to almost Brittany. So, but every single time we do our due diligence before we put something like this online. So when we definitely have more things to offer. When someone looks for something specific and they can't find it yet, it's always good to get in touch, because we might give them a little bit of intel about what is to come. Okay,
well, fantastic. If you have more questions, if you think of something afterwards, do contact Severine and Beaux Villages directly. We would really recommend them and recommend their services. It's a company we've worked with for a long time, and they have such a great reputation. I read about you in the Sunday Times, in fact, this weekend. So do get in touch with Severine and Beaux Villages Immobilier directly to discuss your requirements in detail. And but before we finish, I would just like to invite you to put a recommendation. If you enjoyed it, or if you didn't enjoy our talk and found it useful, do leave a comment on Trustpilot. Thank you to all our viewers for watching this session. We wish you the best in your property purchase in France, and do check out our website for any more information, and our property portal for more properties from Beaux Villages as we get them. Thank you very much, and goodbye. And thank you, Severine.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.